Good afternoon and welcome to a pre-recorded edition of Oberg Windsor's The Shake-Up on CJAM 99.1 FM, redefining radio in Windsor and Detroit. I'm Paul Chislett. On this program, I'm influenced by thinkers who teach, fight, and agitate for a just and inclusive world. The program is an attempt to help create a dialogue leading to such change, and the program is not intended as a journalistic endeavor, but as a counterweight to the propaganda model of the media that's all around us. The views expressed on this program are mine and my guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of CJAM or Oberg Windsor. On Monday, March 31st, Stacey Toews, co-founder and communications catalyst for Level Ground Trading, visited 10,000 Villages Windsor to connect with staff and volunteers and share stories of many small-scale farmers benefiting from direct fair trade through Level Ground. Toews is a co-founder of Level Ground, located in Victoria, British Columbia. Paying well above fair trade mandated pricing, Level Ground will purchase the harvest of about 5,000 farming families in 10 developing countries this year. 10,000 Villages creates opportunities for artisans in developing countries to earn income by bringing their products and stories to our markets through long-term fair trade relationships. Since 1997, 10,000 Villages and Level Ground Trading have partnered to offer a private label coffee collection in 10,000 Villages stores. As a board member of the Global Resource Centre, which runs the 10,000 Villages store here in Windsor, I sat in on the discussion with Toews and Patricia Pearson, also of Level Ground. Following their talk, I sat with Toews to speak further about his work and Level Ground Trading.
My name is Stacey Toews. I'm one of the co-founders of Level Ground Trading, based out of Victoria on Vancouver Island.
You're a co-founder, so maybe talk a bit about how that came about and what Level Ground is hoping to achieve.
It came about through a not very linear path.
Those are the best kind.
My wife and I were starting out in exploring our plans to adopt a child from Haiti. Since that time, we've adopted 3 from the same orphanage, but all 3 kids from different families. This is going back to about 1995. And we were looking at the impacts around the world on impoverished societies and impoverished communities, and looking at the history and roots of poverty in places where poverty seems pretty endemic to what's going on. And that's very much the case with a country like Haiti, where our kids are born. And so we thought that it was frustrating us and affecting us enough in our day-to-day that we needed to find a way to respond to what we saw as global injustice in economic trade, and find a way that would be much more than just a donation here, a sponsorship there, a charity drive, but something that would be potentially part of our everyday. And so we met up with another person who grew up in Colombia, had a first-hand understanding of things like coffee, and was equally concerned about justice for farmers as we were. And in 97, we started Level Ground Trading.
97?
Yeah.
So it's been around quite
17 years.
Some time, yeah.
So in that time, we have steadily established more trade relationships around the world. Our focus is on importing foods from small-scale marginalized farmers who don't have easy access or no access to markets. We don't want to bring in products that are available in your local market produced by local farmers. We want to look for products coming from farmers who are truly disadvantaged, from places that you would never want to go as a tourist holiday on a relaxing vacation. We tend to go to places where people tote guns and have ideologies that they're frustrated about, or where there's corruption, and we want to see better things happen for small-scale farmers who, the more and more we travel and work, we don't see anyone who's upset with farmers. We just see them caught in the crosshairs of problems going on while they don't get the respect and honor they deserve for the good work they're doing in managing the planet. Mm-hmm. So now 17 years in, we've got trade relationships established in 10 countries, in South America, in Africa, and in Asia. And the range of products that we currently have in the market range as far as coconut oil to chai tea, a line of dried fruits that are organic, to coffees from 6 different countries.
You know, this flies in the face of what you termed impersonal global trade as it exists today. So how How have you been able to thrive, and you may have touched on it already, but how have you been able to thrive in a globalized world where massive container ships are bringing in everything you could think of for people to buy?
I think there's an increasing unrest and dis-ease in the North American market with the way trade and food production in general is happening. And I think some of the best change that's being brought about in world economies and in production and economic models around the world ties into food, because people do take food more personally than a lot of other things they purchase, because ultimately it's going to go in their body, it's going to affect their health, and there's so much interconnectedness that can't be stopped at international borders. If you've been polluting, if you've been poisoning the air or the soil, if you're using things that are toxic and harmful to bugs, they'll be toxic and harmful to us as creatures as well. And so food gets very personal, it gets very passionate. We see a lot of people deeply concerned, often disturbed, and they're looking for a solution that's responsive to the needs around them. And we work with farmers who often didn't have a market until we met them, and so we often take years to bring a product to market once we first meet them till it actually shows up in the marketplace. It's a lot of capacity building is what it's referred to in fair trade.
Can you talk about the fair trade minimum price? You compared it to, the minimum wage for a worker here, and that it's barely enough. And how does that fair trade minimum price work, and what do you do to make it fair for the farmer?
We've always maintained that the best way to determine a fair price is what any employer should do with any employee. Ask them what they need to live. A living wage is a better term, I think, than a fair price. I think fair trade has a really weak understanding in the masses in Canada. The concept of a fair price is a wonderful notion, but it's generally very hard to establish. And there are some organizations that establish fair trade prices for different food products. When they do establish those fair trade prices, they've never yet found a way to make it regional or have some dexterity to travel the globe. You can't assume same family size, same input costs, same operating costs for every producer group around the world for any given product that farmers are producing. So our experience has been that until you're on the ground and listening to farmers' needs and challenges and costs, it's completely unrealistic to establish what you think is a fair trade price. And I just feel personally that if I'm going to bring a product to market and say on the package and say in a presentation this is a fair trade product, I better have firsthand heard it from the farmer who produced it, that they believe it's a fair trade price, because I'm supposed to be speaking for what they're interpreting as being fair in their living context. And so in that context, I think minimums are a really bad way to operate, and they allow for a lot of room and, I think, misuse of the concept, a minimum fair price. Why can't we be generous? Why can't we get great quality products that warrant a profitable business model here and leave customers satisfied with the quality of the product they're enjoying and knowing that farmers didn't just squeeze by, but their future looks better than their present because there was ethics at play in the economic model that brought this product to market. With coffee, there's latitude. You've got companies that have come into the play in the market like Starbucks in the 80s, and they taught people if you want good coffee, it's going to cost you $15 to $20 a pound. And if that type of price is accepted in the marketplace for good quality coffee, it allows for justice to be done. You can choose to pay farmers well, to give them premiums for organic practices that see the earth actually getting more productive in their garden plot than less productive, with the water getting cleaner and the forest getting richer and the biodiversity of the migratory bird habitat being more complete every year. That can all be done with a coffee crop in a coffee industry that's well established and recognizes good coffee costs good money. But how do you do that with a product like a mango, where you're looking for, lowest common denominators on biggest mango, shiniest red peel, cheapest price per pound? And we're trying to do that in a host of other products where the industry hasn't carved out a niche for high quality best practices from the farmer.
You showed a chart where you're paying quite a bit more for coffee to the producers, and it just flies in the face of how the global economy works. And how do you manage to do that and then run what looks like a pretty impressive operation in Victoria, where you're paying workers in the warehouse there that do the shipping and the coffee roasting and that sort of thing?
Well, our belief, as I think most would agree if they're running their own businesses, is you've got a happy partnership with your production. You've got potentially a great quality product going into the marketplace, and that is our competitive edge. It's on quality. We want people to be so impressed with the quality of what we bring to the marketplace that they're convinced this is worth a repeat purchase. And in the case of store like 10,000 Villages in Windsor, to whom we supply the fair trade coffee, the dried tropical fruit and such, that people would say it warrants a return visit to 10,000 Villages, that they could buy that product and continue to affirm that business model. We do divulge openly on our website at levelground.com. People can search for our green purchasing history and they can see how much we pay, and we put it right against the world price for specialty Arabica coffees on the day on which we purchased. And generally, depending on the origin and the history, we show all 17 years of our trade history there in coffee. It's anywhere from 50% to 250% above the current world price that coffee was traded on the day that we negotiated a given container of coffee. There's room to do it if you have good quality product.
And what's it like for the workers at the operation of Level Ground in Victoria? How do you manage that workplace?
I'm really pleased with where we're at as a business because we have been able to go way beyond coffee. We've launched a line of organic teas directly from very small-scale gardens in Assam, India in the last year, and a great line of spices into the chai that we get from a small-scale spice-growing co-op in Sri Lanka. And we're going to buy over 300 tons of fresh tropical fruit this year, which when it has the peel and the pit and the moisture taken out and it's dried will only be 10% of that original weight, which is a great environmental way to move fruit. And it means it's shelf stable for 2 years, and it's organically grown and dried. So we've got staff who are passionate about high quality products coming from marginalized producers in other countries who otherwise wouldn't have access to markets. And we focus very much on complementing and affirming the efforts of those farmers in those countries we buy from by trying to have the most sustainable-minded practices in our facility. We pay our staff to cycle to work, to carpool, or to ride the bus. As a result, we have a lot less single-occupant vehicle-type workers coming to work. They end up hitching a ride with a friend or taking the bus or riding their bike or whatever. We've been completely landfill-free since 2005. Our local municipality recycles 5 streams through a blue box program at the curb, but we pay for an extra 8 streams to be collected at our facility. We make that free of charge to all of our staff, so their household can have 13 streams come to our work. It costs them nothing to do that. So all 30 of our households, represented by our staff, can also be landfill free as well. We claim back our empty packages and have them upcycled by a person who was a seamstress in her previous country of Iran, and it's employment for her where she lives now in Victoria to cover costs for herself and her kids. So we're trying to be integrated in all of our behaviors and functions so that our environmental imprint is as minimal as possible, and our relationship with our staff, just like the farmers in other countries, gives them a reason to want to never depart, because we hire on a values alignment rather than a skill set basis. And so the bulk of our staff have been with us 10 plus years.
So they're earning a living wage, or it's a more holistic look, because I'm hearing that some of the things that impact our workday lives, like how much it costs to get to work and other expenses at the household, are also covered at work, like for instance the recycling. So I'm hearing a different model or what could be a different model for workplaces if
the concept of a work-life balance is so critical, because if you're a parent and you've got a child who's struggling or a health issue in your family and you're not able to fully attend to what is needed of you at work, but your employer doesn't allow for flexibility in your work-life balance, that's only going to frustrate them. It's not going to cause them to do a better job while you tell them to toe the line and ignore those concerns they have at home. So we've tried to structure a suitable arrangement for all of our staff that's custom internally to each of their situations and challenges. And so if it works best for a mom who's got kids in school to show up just after she drops them at school and leave just before she has to pick them up after school, and we can arrange that, that's a person who becomes a lifer. They're the most incredibly productive person who appreciates that their current employer at Level Ground is very different than previous employers they've had. We've hooked up with what we think is the best ethical mutual fund investment company in the country. So our RSP matching with all of our staff, 2.5% max from Level Ground to the 2.5% they have, is showing great returns financially, but ethically we believe it's the best fund mix they could have for their retirement. So we're paying for them to have lunch regularly so they can learn about the farmers, learn about their investments, learn about different things like that. And obviously the best perk with what we do is that if you can take a staff person who's doing a great job and take them to Colombia or Tanzania or Sri Lanka and show them firsthand what's happening in the communities where we do trade, they see firsthand and they can add firsthand to improving our trade model so that it even gets better in improving the lives of farmers through a direct trade relationship.
So what are the wages like for the workers? And I'm only asking because it's a particular focus of mine and my other work, and then I'm hearing all the other tremendous attributes that go along with what would be compensation for workers. So I'm just trying to see what kind of balance there is between focusing on the needs of farmers, which is so crucial, and we'll talk a little bit for a few minutes about you're an organic farmer as well.
Yeah.
And then workers here in Canada, wherever it may be, that we're stuck in a wage economy, no matter, for the time being anyways, until new alternatives can flourish, whether they're cooperatives or different forms of workplace organizations. So that's what I'm wondering if your model provides that kind of alternative for workplaces. And also in the Windsor context, because everything's about wages here, right?
Interesting,
because
yeah.
it's a manufacturing town, and everybody's kind of waiting for the next big thing to come here to provide those wages, and yet at the same time, I'm part of a group of people that are talking about cooperatives and new ways of organizing ourselves as workers. So on the one hand, wages are really important, but on the other hand, there's got to be some other models so that it makes it possible to live, and participate in our communities rather than just struggling on minimum wage jobs.
Yes.
Over and over again, which is unfortunately too much the experience here in Windsor and Detroit.
We certainly build our compensation model around the significance of a staff person's contribution to the ultimate mission and goal of our company's mission. And alleviating poverty in a producer community is our ultimate goal. Paying ourselves as owners big salaries isn't. My first 5 years building Level Ground, 97, 2002, when I worked while I was getting my family and my organic farm going, I was paying myself $10 an hour, which now is below the minimum wage. I was the sole sales force person for our company. The concept of fair trade was brand new. The best paid people at Level Ground aren't the owners. They're actually people on our sales team. And they get compensation that relates to their sales growth, their sales performance, their amount of new accounts over a year. There's many different factors that play into what they're paid, but we ensure that their base salary is a livable wage in our economy. The people who would get paid the least in our place would be people who are in a facility, production type of role. They're filling packages of coffee, they're shipping out packages of coffee, and filling other customers' orders. We try to do a lot of things related, again, to work-life balance so that the hours that they want for family purposes or sporting activities, and these are usually young guys who are transitioning in or out of university, they'll often take off for a year or 6 months while they go do something or try something else out and come back to us. And so our goal is to most of all see where they're at and see how we can blend in what works best for them. There are exceptions to that, and when there's people who look like they're looking for a career in what we do, even though they may have started in production, we look to find a way to fast track them into better things that will really fulfill what their greatest desires are. So to get down to like a brass tacks answer to what you're saying, people start in our production facility, which is the entry level role in our company, at about $12 or $12.50 an hour. Our focus, though, is on redundancy for every team member in about a 12-person team for production, with the goal that every 2 to 3 months they can build sufficient hours, first of all under supervision and then working with observation, but a bit from a distance. They can practice an independent role in everything from filling a package to shipping a package to delivering a package and merchandising it onto a local store's shelf to receiving different incoming shipments of supply products to our facility, to labeling different packages, to roasting coffee, to managing inventory numbers. And every one of those things I've mentioned gives them between a 50-cent to $1.50 an hour raise. And they permanently have that added to their ongoing hourly wage, regardless of whether they've been practiced or on an ongoing basis, weekly, daily, monthly, doing that task. Basically, when you're redundant at it, we just keep you fresh at it often enough so that you still know how to do it well. The result is we never have a person or two who do the roasting, a person or two who do the labeling, or a person or two who do the picking or packing of an order. Everyone's able to do everything and regularly is rotated through it. No one creates a little empire or domain where they do it. When one person's sick or two people are away on holidays or whatever happens, that 12-person team can be down a person or two and do equally well. And the result is 6 months to a year in, each person who's been there and decided the values alignment's excellent, is making 15, 16 an hour or something like that. They're seeing with the level ground matching 5% to their RSP. They get a lot of takeaway awesome product out of our warehouse, like coffee and tea and dried fruit, and a lot of flexibility in their schedule. Yeah. Well, a part of what we do at Level Ground is we try to look for producer groups who have great products that have limited or no access to markets. We are asking, will this product find legs and find its feet in the marketplace here? But often if I find a good product, I go, I'm going to try to find it a place in the market. There's constant tension between what customers here wish for and what the marketplace has told them they should be wanting versus what really could be the best quality or best value for them. The classic case in point is how people prepare coffee at home. It's generally god-awful horrific. When I look at a study of any customer base across the country that buys our coffee, I think about 85% take it to a home brewer on their kitchen counter and run it through a paper filter and a drip machine. In terms of taking the best potential flavor out of a beautifully crafted, fair trade organic coffee that's been artisanally small batch roasted, putting it through a drip paper filter is about the worst thing you can do for delivering flavor to your palate and making your taste buds happy. Because you're ultimately not drinking the coffee, you're drinking the oils that came off the coffee. And oils are the flavor deliverers to your taste buds. Ever tried pouring oil through paper? It doesn't travel. So the oil stays stuck in that paper filter and water flows through with some color added, but the bulk of the flavor is trapped in the paper. If you went to a reusable metal filter, a lot more of those oils would get through and a lot more of the flavor. But what about the simplicity of a French press? A container with a plunger. In 4 minutes, you have beautiful coffee that really delivers the full flavor of what's in the package. If it's great coffee, you'll taste it in a French press. You can miss a lot of great coffee in a drip filter with a paper filter especially. You know, go a step lower on the rung of quality. Go to a K-Cup, a throwaway environmental disaster of a product, probably roasted in the States and not in Canada, maybe months ago, usually with an artificial food flavoring like hazelnut or Irish cream to mask the actually bad quality of the coffee that's in there, so it's neither fresh nor high quality, and then a push-button single-cup delivery system that costs $100 to $150 when you can buy a French press for $20 if it's non-breakable plastic glass, $50 if it's stainless steel and will last you for 50 years. It's horrid.
Horrid.
The marketplace isn't telling us how to do good things with food, and it never has, right? Governments subsidize the worst food products for our health and the worst food products for the environment. They always subsidize corn. They never subsidize broccoli. The money doesn't go towards the best nutrition for our bodies or the best behavior for the soil. And so we've got to relearn these behaviors, and I think it's not done by working more and putting our head down. It's about buying less, living more simply, and thoughtfully engaging with those around us so that as a community, we make better decisions together.
Maybe before we wrap up, just a bit of a insight from you about being an organic farmer and how that informs your work with Level Ground and vice versa.
My whole goal on a 1.5 acre plot with a family of 6 and usually 2 others living on the property, there's usually 8 mouths to feed around the table. And we save $500 to $1,000 a year. $500 to $1,000 a month on groceries off our little 1.5 acre farm, and we press the apple from our juice for fresh juice and make cider. We get locally grown wheat and barley that we run through a flour mill to bake our own things. When I make rice pudding at home, it's an heirloom organic rice that I imported from farmers. You know, I cook it in raw milk from my cow. I add organic cane sugar and cinnamon that I imported from Colombia and Sri Lanka, and I thicken it with a vanilla bean I bought from Ugandan farmers and a duck egg from my duck. And so it's a mix of the best local, freshest organic ingredients and the best possible products I can source from other countries, and that's the food I like to put in my body and offer to my kids and my guests. And the beautiful thing is that on our property, we can save a lot of money on groceries that actually validates our labor, and we can have such a broad cross-section of foods basically from early June through to late October that are fresh and the rest of the year that are canned or frozen. And it's done with no inputs into our land. Pigs turn our garden in the winter when we're not gardening the soil. Chickens clean up behind the cow. ducks clean up behind the chickens and the cow. The other day I was having a coffee and I was running out my back door in my socks across the wet lawn to get a bald eagle off the back of one of my ducks. That's a typical behavior or activity happening in our backyard. But we're in touch with what's going on around us. And so I like that opportunity, and really it models the very farm I'm wanting to buy from in another country where farmers don't have access to paved roads, healthcare systems, and funded education. They have an acre or two. They can't afford inputs, so they're organic by force often, not by choice. But they're growing great quality product, first for their family to eat, and secondly for a product to ship out and hopefully get paid a decent price for. I want to model that farm at home so that I can understand how that farm works in their context as best as possible. Mm-hmm. But for me, I've always wanted to integrate what I believe with what I do so that there's not really a divide. Mm-hmm. And whenever I think a person, myself or anyone else I've observed, finds a sense of consistency or cohesiveness between what they say they believe and what they get to everyday do, they find out that they love the place God's planted them on the planet, and they flourish there. Mm-hmm. I would just put out there that if someone's listening and they've wondered about keeping bees, and they've wondered if it's worth the cost of buying a 5-frame nuke or a 10-frame hive with a queen and just seeing if it's worth it, you got to try it. It's an amazing, life-changing experience to see nature through the eyes of a beehive. I've recently watched a documentary on Netflix, and it focuses on bees and the need for bee sanctuaries to get out of the monocrop toxic wasteland, which is typical everyday farming that causes and continues the collapse of bee colonies. I believe it's called Queen of the Sun. And it's a really great look at people who are doing their best to organic farm and organic beekeep, and recognize that much as in water and marshlands, invertebrate and frog populations are one of the greatest indicators of the fragility of the ecosystem and how we have to be careful how we tread. Bees are a great indicator of how well or how poorly we're stewarding the land.
Stacey, once again, thanks so much for this.
Gladly.
Yeah, thank you.